What's up, guys? With this crazy seller's market right now, you may be asking your house, can I sell for sale by owner? And the answer to that question is, of course you can. But the question is, should you? What's up, Scott? How you doing today, brother?
I am doing good, man. And yeah, great question to be asking right now, because I know based on what we've seen out there, right, it might seem from the outside to be pretty easy to sell a house in this market, right?
Well, you're certainly going to get people lined up at the door. Maybe I shouldn't say certainly, but let's just jump right into it. So what do you think some of the main reasons somebody would entertain selling for sale by owner?
So I think regardless of the market that we're in, the two things you're always going to hear is, listen, I'm going to save the commission, right? And that's really the big one to me. I guess like the only other alternative that maybe I've heard is like it's an experiential thing where somebody had like such a bad experience with an agent previously that they've decided that the better alternative is to just avoid working with an agent again.
Yeah, I think that's,
yeah,
I'd say that's got to be the only other alternative is that, it's to, not even, it's saving the commission, but the question is, but are you netting enough money to offset what you would spend on commission? We'll dig into that. But the only other thing I could think in conversations that I've had is just a bad experience with a realtor in the past and just doesn't believe that they're going to actually do anything differently than they would.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that certainly stacks the cards against there being a good reason to go for sale by owner. It's a tricky argument to make.
So if you came to my house for a listing appointment and I said, Scott, I'm actually thinking of selling for sale by owner, what are some of the things that you would bring up that are true? That are some of the things that you've seen for sale by owners go through just in that conversation. What are some of the dangers of selling as a for sale by owner?
Yeah. So I think that's where, like, when I try to come up with the pros for sale by owner, instead in my head, and I don't know if that's just agent brain, but like I just keep thinking of all of the dangers and downsides to going for sale by owner. So just simple dangers would be like, are you actually going to get like you said, you alluded to the idea of like netting more money. Are you, as a for sale by owner, truly going to get I guess I would say like exposure is a big thing, right? Are you going to get the kind of exposure that's needed to get the amount of eyes on your house while it's being marketed to get the highest possible contract and net yourself the most amount of money? I don't know that that's possible. I also think we've talked in a previous episode about some of the changes that have happened with these online, search tools, right, that are out there for consumers to search for homes. And it used to be that there was a time where one of the big ones would display for sale by owner homes right in line with the other agent listed homes. Now that they've shifted to being more of a brokerage model, if you search for a home, you're going to notice that the for sale by owners are hidden on a separate tab now. So that's where I guess, like, to me, exposure is a big starting point to the downside of listing for sale by owner. Are you going to get enough eyes on your listing? What about you, man? Any kind of like big things that FSBO should be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things, but just to follow up your point, say you do plop it on one of those online websites and maybe you do get, a ton of exposure and a ton of people interested in your property. My question is, are you asking the right questions? Have you been through down this road enough times to be able to spot those red flags before you have that person in your home, right? Mm-hmm. Are you making sure that they're pre-qualified and people I think drive by open houses and stuff and they see a line of 50 people out the door and they think, okay, well, how hard could it be? You and I both know it's not easy managing 50 people walking through a house at an open house and doing it safely and getting everybody's information, knowing the right questions to ask. So that's one thing. The other thing I would ask is, do you have the time to do this? Right. I mean, it's not just throw a sign on the front lawn and then someone comes in and, just swipes their credit card and walk out with the deed, right? I mean, it's a whole process that goes in line with it. And I think it, to your point with the exposure as well, is where are most buyers right now? Most buyers are working with real estate agents like you and I, right? And the average buyer, has no idea. I'm sorry if you're a buyer out there and you do know what you're doing, but the average buyer isn't really familiar with this process. They buy a home once or twice in their lifetime. They want to be guided by a professional. So what now? You're going for sale by owner to save the money, but you're still paying a buyer's agent to bring that buyer through the process.
So now you're only saving half the amount. And then you're also, I mean, the old go-to line in that case is, right, now you're going to pay someone to negotiate against you, right? Because they represent the buyer. They don't represent your best interests. Yeah, there's a lot of like downside in that. And then I think the other thing is, you mentioned like the pre-qualifying, right? And so like using like a real example, right, of a recent situation, my listing, we ended up with 11 great offers on the table, right? And yet, even as an agent, it took a lot, like time, right? And knowing that, hey, this pre-qual letter isn't as strong as this pre-approval letter. This, language around the appraisal and a gap coverage on it means this for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Like, contracts now have so much information in them because buyers are gearing up with their agents to try and beat out those other buyers, right? So like the contract has gotten more complicated. In a more normal market, you might have a contract that's pretty, boilerplate, simple, and then it's just really, okay, did they get a pre-approval with the bank? Now you've got a lot of different factors to bring into the equation there and how they're going to impact you getting to the closing table as a seller, which is why the other thing that I would bring up too is in this market, I was just having this conversation with first-time home buyers saying like first-time home buyers in this market are actually kind of like power players, right? Because a lot of times they're month-to-month rentals, they're staying at home with mom and dad, so they can offer ultimate flexibility to someone selling their house, right? A lot of them have saved up a lot of money working from home and things like that, so they've got great down payments. They're strong buyers because they don't have a lot of contingencies or baggage that they bring to the table in purchasing a home. If you are going to go the for sale by owner route in this market specifically, right? Like Pete, when was the last time you saw a home sale contingency on an offer on one of your listings?
No, I mean, it's been months and months and months.
That kind of offer is really tricky in this market right now to move forward with because it's putting another domino that needs to fall down in the correct order in a market that's already tricky. So now let's say you rock it out, right? You're a for sale by owner, you kill it, you get an offer you're really happy with, and now you've got to go out and potentially start shopping for a home, right? And that seller is going to ask, hey, you're going to probably use a realtor to go shop for a home, and you're going to have to disclose that to purchase, you might have to, close on your home sale. If I'm an agent looking at that offer and I know, hey, you're for sale by owner and you're under contract, that's an uphill battle for me to get that home sale contingency done with in accepting your offer. So I think in this market, and it's interesting. So I know we said we weren't going to throw a lot of stats out there this time, but the one that I think is relevant is that we're kind of almost trying to find out like, what does make sense? Who should be a for sale by owner right now? And the numbers back that up, right? I think it was like 20 years ago, 15% of all home sales were for sale by owners. Now that number is below 7% of all home sales. I think like fewer and fewer people are finding that it makes sense to move forward on, right?
Yeah. And I would also say in today's world, we're busier and busier, right? Work doesn't just stop at 5 o'clock when you leave for the day, right? You have email, phone calls, everything going on, plus picking up the kids from practice and making dinner and laundry and all. Like, when are you fitting that into like a lot of my clients? It's sometimes hard enough to see homes with a realtor, let alone, trying to coordinate all. And that's what we're doing on our end. Right. And also just going back to like identifying offers that come in, I think it's also important. We know each other, for not everybody, obviously, but we know the good agents and the less professional agents in the industry, right? So it's also avoiding that as well, right? You have an offer coming in from an agent and you've had a good experience with this one. Even if the numbers and stuff aren't the best, you might give them a little bit more credibility because the deal is going to get to the table, as opposed to somebody who you've had a bad experience with and you know that there's some red flags there. And just to kind of put a button on what you were saying, just to make sure that everybody follows, is you're pretty much saying that as a for sale by owner, as well, let me just eliminate that. As a contingent buyer, meaning I sell my house and I have to sell this house in order to buy the next one, that's hard enough. But if I'm selling my house for sale by owner and I go to a listing to go buy a house, now it's infinitely more difficult because you're concerned about, the actual execution on my end, because a for sale by owner has a higher chance of falling through.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, I think again, it's just kind of like a needle in a haystack kind of scenario where, like, I think very few people, it makes sense to for sale by owner, like that. There's so many cards stacked against you going that route, knowing that you're likely going to net less money. You're going to spend more time doing that. And if you do have to go buy another house, you're really stacking the cards against your favor. So, like, I know we started out questioning, like, why should you for sale by owner? So I guess I would, as we get towards the end of our session here, like, I would ask, like, why would you for sale by owner?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen, real estate agents, I'll say they're licensed, they have their license, list their homes or list their home for sale by owner. And, that's another thing we didn't really talk about, right? We always advise our clients, like, hey, you don't really want to be home for the showings, right? Because, you're that independent, you're that third party that kind of is like, it's not my house, but I do represent them. It's always a little awkward when you're walking through a property with the homeowner, right? Even as a professional, when I walk through a home with the homeowner, it makes me feel a little weird because I can't really talk freely to my clients about it. I don't want to insult anybody. So you kind of get in and out as quickly as possible. So it's just, there's a lot of things that are stacked against a for sale by owner in defense of for sale by owners, right? I would just say, if you've got the grit and you're ready to put some time into it, maybe you're retired, maybe you've got some extra time on your hands. But I think really having that buffer in between, like that personal, this is my, like, if I were going to sell my house, I would hire you. I wouldn't want to do it myself because I'm too emotionally attached to this. There's too many situations in any market, forget this specific market, where, clients get close to blowing up deals, right? Because it gets emotional and it's about winning. But when you kind of take a step back and you have somebody there who's guiding you in that middle person to remind you, hey, look, yes, I know this might not be going exactly as you planned, but if we step back and look at the whole picture, this is exactly what we wanted, because we wanted to get you to Florida, or we wanted to get you to North Carolina, or in a bigger or smaller house. And that's ultimately the goal. So those are just some things about for sale by owners. Let us know what you think. I'm sure this is going to be a little bit of a hot button topic, because I know, people go for sale by owner, and that's, there's nothing wrong with that. If you have a for sale by owner, send it our way. We'd be happy to give you some tips on what we can do a little bit better for you.
Yeah, exactly. And one last thought there. You mentioned, and I'm glad you used this word, you said guiding. We're here to guide people, right? We recently read Building a Story Brand, which talked about the importance of being the guide to your customer, right? And so that is such a huge point, especially when it does come to the emotions. I'm glad you're going to list your house with me, and I'll happily return the favor. And if I ever sell my house, I'll list it with you. Because I do think, like, right, even being in the industry, the home that we live in, you build an emotional attachment to it. And so I would want someone else there to be that guide for me, to say, Scott, like, you're thinking a little bit on the emotional side here. Just take a step back. I'm not emotionally invested in this. I'm here as your guide, and I'm going to tell you, listen, like, this is a good thing. I know it seems like it's, a big bump in the road, and maybe your immediate thought is like, yeah, screw them, but let's stay in this because it's best for you. And I think having that guide through a transaction is where we as listing agents can, gain a lot of our value. So
yeah, it's where you build your reputation.
Yep. So that was a great point, man. Glad you brought up guiding people through. And yeah, probably a controversial topic. I don't even know if we came to a conclusive thing, besides the fact that the stats bear it out. Very few people are sale by owning today, and there might be good reason to that. So.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching this. Make sure you smash that like button, give us a comment, shoot a message. Let us know what you think. If you have another topic that you'd like us to cover, let us know. And until next time, have a great day.